You did everything you were told to do. You chased the goal everyone promised would bring peace. You worked harder, stayed responsible, and kept going, yet something still feels wrong. The problem isn't your effort, it's the goal itself. This is the moment you realize you weren't failing. You were chasing the wrong finish line. The moment you realize the goal was never yours. There's a quiet moment that doesn't feel dramatic at all. No breakdown, no crisis, no visible failure. It happens when life finally looks right on paper, yet something inside feels unsettled. You did what you were supposed to do. You chose the safe path. You worked toward the goal that everyone said would matter. Stability, progress, success. But standing here now, the relief never arrived. Your days are full, but your mind isn't free. Your income improved, but your peace didn't. Your progress is real, yet it feels strangely hollow. That's when the thought creeps in, slow, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. What if this was never my goal to begin with? This realization doesn't come from failure, it comes from compliance. You followed a blueprint that wasn't designed by you, it was inherited, absorbed. Repeated so often it felt universal. Study hard, work consistently, be responsible, build toward security. One day you'll relax. So you chased that destination with discipline. You delayed joy. You measured yourself by milestones. You told yourself that meaning would arrive later, after the promotion, after the stability, after the achievement. And now you're here, not unhappy, not struggling, just unsatisfied. The discomfort is subtle, which is why it's so confusing. Nothing is technically wrong, but something is missing. You feel busy without feeling fulfilled, accomplished without feeling complete. That's when you realize something important. The goal you were chasing was external. It was defined by safety, not by alignment, by appearances, not by inner clarity. You weren't moving toward what you wanted. You were moving away from fear. Fear of instability, fear of falling behind, fear of disappointing expectations. So you optimized your life around avoiding risk instead of pursuing meaning. You built a structure that looks successful but feels heavy to maintain, and the cost is internal. You start noticing how much of your energy goes into sustaining the goal instead of living within it. How many decisions are made to protect progress rather than expand freedom? How often you suppress curiosity because it doesn't fit the plan. This is the moment awareness sharpens. You see that the goal didn't fail you. You outgrew it. The problem isn't that you chose badly. It's that the goal was designed for a version of you that no longer exists. A version that prioritized certainty over fulfillment, approval over authenticity, stability over self-trust. And now the tension makes sense. You weren't meant to feel peace at the finish line because the finish line wasn't yours. It was borrowed, inherited, culturally approved. Realizing this can feel disorienting. When the old goal loses its power, there's a brief sense of emptiness, not knowing what to chase next, not knowing what enough looks like anymore. But that discomfort is not loss, it's space. Space where clarity begins to form. Space where you stop measuring life by progress and start measuring it by presence. Space where you question whether success should feel this exhausting. This is not the end of ambition. It's the beginning of alignment. And once you see that you were chasing the wrong goal, you can no longer unsee it. At some point, the goal stopped being peace. Not intentionally, not dramatically. It happened quietly over time without anyone announcing the change. You didn't wake up one day and decide to chase the wrong thing. You simply followed what everyone else treated as success. The goal became progress, more income, more milestones, more proof that you were moving forward, promotions, bigger plans, better positioning. It all looked responsible, logical, mature, and on the surface it felt like growth. But progress is addictive when it replaces peace. You start measuring your life by motion instead of comfort. As long as something is improving, you assume you're doing well. As long as numbers are rising, you ignore how you feel. You tell yourself stress is temporary, pressure is normal, and rest will come later. Later never arrives. Because progress has no finish line, there is always a next level, a higher standard, a new comparison. Someone doing more with less time, less effort, less struggle. And without realizing it, you begin chasing movement instead of relief. This is where the shift happens. The goal stops being enough. It becomes not falling behind. That's a dangerous upgrade. Once your goal is staying ahead, peace becomes optional. You accept anxiety as a companion. You tolerate constant tension because it signals momentum. If things feel calm, you assume something is wrong. You should be doing more, pushing harder, preparing for what's next. And the system rewards this mindset. People who chase progress are reliable. They work longer, commit faster, upgrade sooner. They take on responsibility willingly because responsibility looks like maturity. They don't ask whether a step adds pressure, only whether it looks like advancement. So they build lives that move forward but never slow down. This is why the wrong goal is so effective. It doesn't feel wrong. It feels ambitious. It feels disciplined. It feels like winning. But internally, something changes. You stop asking, does this make my life easier? You start asking, does this make me look like I'm succeeding? Those are very different questions. Progress-focused lives optimize for optics, not experience. They prioritize visible improvement over internal stability. You accumulate proof, income, assets, credentials, while quietly losing margin, flexibility, and rest. And because everything looks fine from the outside, you ignore the warning signs. The constant background anxiety, the inability to enjoy small wins, the feeling that stopping would cause everything to fall apart. Those are not motivation problems. They are goal problems. Peace was never meant to come at the end of progress. It was supposed to guide it. But once progress becomes the goal, peace gets postponed indefinitely. This is why so many people reach impressive positions and feel empty. They achieved exactly what they were aiming for, movement without relief. The wrong goal doesn't fail loudly. It succeeds quietly and costs you slowly. You don't feel the loss all at once. You feel it in how often your mind returns to money, in how rarely you feel fully present, and how every improvement brings new pressure instead of calm. And because society celebrates motion, no one tells you to stop. They tell you to keep going. But the moment you question the goal itself, not your effort, not your discipline, not your intelligence, clarity begins to return. You realize you weren't chasing freedom. You were chasing proof. And proof will never give you peace. You thought freedom would arrive naturally, after the hard years, after the grind paid off, after the sacrifices made sense in hindsight. Freedom was supposed to be the reward for endurance. If you stayed disciplined long enough, it would appear quietly and stay. But it didn't, and that absence feels confusing because nothing obviously went wrong. You followed the formula. You improved your position. You reduced obvious risks. You built something that looks stable, yet freedom never entered the picture. That's because freedom was never built into the system you followed. What you were actually building was sustainability, not freedom. Sustainability keeps things running. It ensures continuity. It prevents collapse. But it does not create choice. It creates obligation. The difference matters. A sustainable life requires ongoing input. Income must continue. Energy must be supplied. Attention must be maintained. If any of those slow down, the system weakens. That's not freedom. That's dependency dressed up as success. Freedom, on the other hand, requires slack. Slack is what allows you to pause without penalty, to change direction without damage, to say no without fear, and slack is systematically removed as you optimize your life for efficiency and progress. Each responsible decision tightens the structure. You commit to better standards, you raise your baseline, you eliminate variability. On paper, this looks like growth. In practice, it narrows your options. Your life becomes efficient but brittle. This is why freedom never showed up. You didn't fail to earn it. You built a system that could not contain it. Freedom cannot exist in a structure that demands constant performance. It conflicts with optimization. It requires waste, margin, unused capacity, things modern success frameworks label as inefficiency. So you learn to eliminate them. You learn to fill your time, allocate your money, plan your future tightly. Nothing left idle, nothing left unused, everything optimized. And the moment you do that, freedom disappears, because freedom lives in the unused space. This is also why adding more money didn't fix the feeling. Income increased, but the structure expanded to absorb it. Responsibilities scaled, expectations adjusted. The system became more expensive to maintain, so the gap never opened. From the outside, it looked like progress. From the inside, it felt like running on a moving floor. You weren't standing still. You just weren't getting anywhere that mattered. This creates a strange emotional conflict. You feel ungrateful for wanting more ease. You feel weak for craving relief. You tell yourself others would be happy in your position. So you suppress the discomfort and call it ambition. But discomfort doesn't disappear when ignored. It accumulates. It shows up as restlessness, as impatience, as the inability to enjoy what you've built, as a constant sense that something is missing, even when nothing is technically wrong. That missing element is freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, freedom from fragility, freedom from the fear that a pause would break everything. You weren't chasing laziness. You were chasing safety and movement. You wanted to know that if life shifted, you wouldn't collapse with it. But the structure you followed was designed to prevent collapse only if nothing changes. That's not life. That's maintenance. Real freedom doesn't come from perfect planning. It comes from resilience. From systems that survive disruption. From lives that can slow down without punishment. You didn't reach freedom because you weren't supposed to. The system you followed produces continuity, not choice. Once you understand this, the confusion lifts. You stop asking why freedom never arrived. You start asking what would have to change for it to exist at all, and that question changes everything. Once you realize the goal never delivered freedom, a harder truth appears. The goal was never meant to. It was designed to keep you in motion, not to let you arrive, to keep you striving, not settling, to make you productive, not free. And it worked perfectly. From the beginning, the goal was framed as a destination, a number, a status, a milestone that would signal enough, but every version of that goal quietly depended on continuous participation. A better job requires performance. A higher income requires maintenance. A comfortable life requires constant upkeep. The finish line only exists as long as you keep running. This is not accidental. Modern success systems reward forward momentum, not stability in place. They are built around growth assumptions, rising costs, expanding expectations, increasing dependency. If you stop, friction appears immediately. That's the design. The goal shifts just far enough ahead to stay visible but unreachable. Once you approach it, the criteria changes. Needs grow, standards rise, comparisons adjust. What once felt like success becomes baseline. So you keep moving. You're told this is ambition, that wanting more is healthy, that discomfort means you're progressing. And in small doses, that's true. But when discomfort becomes permanent, it's no longer motivation, it's control. A system that never allows arrival keeps people compliant. Arrival creates questions. Movement suppresses them. When you're constantly chasing the next upgrade, you don't stop to ask whether the structure itself serves you. You focus on optimizing within it, improving efficiency, eliminating waste, increasing output. You become better at running the race, not at choosing whether to run. That's why the goal emphasizes visible progress over internal relief. Titles, income, ownership, metrics, things that can be measured and displayed. They create validation without providing insulation. You look successful long before you feel secure. And because others see progress, you're pressured to keep going. Stopping feels like failure. Pausing feels irresponsible. Questioning the goal feels ungrateful. So you internalize the pressure. You tell yourself relief comes later, that peace is deferred, that struggle is temporary, even when it's been years. This creates a dangerous loop. The longer you chase, the more invested you become. You've sacrificed too much to stop now. You've structured your life around the pursuit. Walking away feels impossible, not because it is, but because the system removed your ability to imagine alternatives. That's another feature, not a bug. Goals that truly end would collapse participation. Systems need continuation. So the goals are designed to transform, not resolve. Financial independence becomes optimization. Optimization becomes legacy. Legacy becomes obligation. There's always a next frame to chase, and the cost is invisibly transferred to you. Stress becomes normal. Fatigue becomes discipline. Anxiety becomes responsibility. You stop seeing them as signals and start seeing them as proof you're doing things right. That's the deepest illusion. A healthy goal reduces pressure as you approach it. This one increases it, because the closer you get, the more you have to protect. More assets, more commitments, more expectations, more fragility. The goal doesn't free you, it tightens around you. So when people finally ask, why doesn't this feel better? They assume something is wrong with them. Nothing is. They reach the edge of a system that only works while you keep moving. The realization isn't that you failed the goal, it's that the goal succeeded at its real purpose, keeping you running. Once you see this, the question shifts again. Not how do I reach the goal, but what would a goal look like that allows me to stop? That question leads somewhere entirely different. At some point, the chase loses its power, not because you're tired of effort, but because you're tired of motion without arrival. You begin to see that the problem was never ambition. It was direction. The wrong goal doesn't feel wrong at first. It feels motivating. It gives structure. It gives purpose. It gives you something to aim at when uncertainty feels uncomfortable. But over time, you notice the cost. The goal requires constant upkeep, constant output, constant attention. You can't slow down without consequences. You can't step away without fear. And slowly, your life becomes organized around preventing disruption rather than creating meaning. That's when a different kind of question appears. Not how far can I go, but how much do I need? This question changes everything. A goal that lets you stop is built around sufficiency, not maximization. It prioritizes durability over growth, flexibility over performance, control over appearance. This doesn't mean doing less, it means designing differently. Instead of optimizing for income, you optimize for margin. Instead of accumulating assets, you accumulate options. Instead of expanding commitments, you reduce fragility. You stop asking what will impress others and start asking what will protect you when life changes. This is where real freedom begins. Freedom is not the absence of work. It's the absence of panic when work pauses. It's knowing you can slow down without everything unraveling. It's being able to choose, rest, change, or redirection without financial punishment. That kind of freedom requires a different goal structure, one that welcomes slack. That allows unused capacity. That doesn't demand constant justification. It looks inefficient from the outside. Quiet, unambitious, even lazy, but it's strong. Because strength isn't constant motion. It's the ability to absorb shock. When your goal allows you to stop, you stop measuring success by speed. You measure it by tolerance. How much disruption can your life handle without fear? How many bad months can you survive without panic? How easily can you adjust without damage? Those answers matter more than numbers. This shift also changes how you view progress. Progress becomes subtraction, not addition. Fewer dependencies, fewer fixed costs, fewer obligations that require continuous performance. You trade growth for stability of choice. And something surprising happens. The pressure eases. Not because you achieved everything, but because the system you're inside no longer punishes rest. You're not racing against invisible deadlines. You're not chasing a moving finish line. You've defined enough in a way that doesn't escape. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you deliberate. You still work. You still build. But you build things that can survive neglect. You choose paths that don't collapse if attention shifts. You design your life to bend instead of break. That's the opposite of the old goal. The old goal demanded performance forever. The new one respects limits. And when limits are respected, peace appears naturally, not as a reward, as a byproduct. You stop asking when life will feel safe. It already does. Because safety is no longer tied to constant success. You didn't lose ambition. You refined it. You stopped chasing outcomes that require endless motion and chose one that allows arrival. That's the moment everything changes, not when you win the race, but when you realize you never needed to run it in the first place. You weren't lazy. You weren't careless. You weren't behind. You were just chasing a finish line that was never designed to give peace. The problem was never your effort. It was the goal. Real security isn't owning more, finishing the game. It's having room when life goes wrong. And the moment you see that clearly, everything changes.